Okay, good evening, everybody. Tonight's shir is entitled Egypt Today. So I'll tell you what the shir isn't about. The shir is not really talking about modern day Egypt. The shir is really talking about how Egypt is, as a culture and as a Weltanschauung, as a world view, is very much alive and well in our present day world. I once thought that society has no truer mirror than its advertising. If you look at TV ads, principally, and also print ads, an ad really expresses the true desire of what that society really wants. They spend vast amounts of money on advertising for a couple of minutes. Proportionately, I'm guessing, but I would assume that the amount of money invested in thinking about the idea, refining the phrase, the slogan, the product approach, the demographic, all of that incredible creativity has to be tailored to something which is ultimately going to make money. And I think it's axiomatic that what people are prepared to put in their hands into their pockets and pull out their hard-earned cash for really represents something very fundamental to them, very independent to them. And therefore, the way you want to try and get the money out of those people's pockets is to give them, appeal to them with visuals and images and dreams, if you like, which are going to appeal to that deepest desire that they have, that society has. So it seems to me that maybe a very true reflection of society's true moral values are expressed in what advertisers will use in order to attract people to buy their product. And if you think about it, much of advertising is about getting away from it, escapism. If you think about it, that you have all these ads out in the desert there with some four-wheel drive. You can go anywhere you want. You can go everywhere you want. There's nothing holding you back. You're totally free. That's like a dream. The vast American Midwest, not the Midwest, the Wild West, the whole idea of the Wild West, the paragliding, some completely deserted, beautiful golden beach with nothing but palm trees, some private island off the coast of Curacao or somewhere. This is really what, if you want to sell a chocolate bar, you want to latch into that. But eat this chocolate bar and you'll be free. You'll be as free as somebody who's driving this Ferrari down this beautiful coast road in Monte Carlo. Buy this soap powder and you'll be able to escape. You'll have this wonderful film star life where, right? I think unfortunately we all know what I'm talking about. That advertising really plugs in to what people really want, and the reason why that is because, there's gold in the Ndar Hills, as they say. That's where the money is. That's the motherlode. If you can plug into what people's deepest desires are, you can convince them. You can then, schlep that across to the fact that if you use this particular soap powder, you will be a Hollywood star and you'll have, whatever. Okay, I think the point's clear. But I was thinking, a lot of a common theme, not in all ads, but a common theme of many ads is this idea of being a freedom. I want to do what I want, when I want, and I can change what I want from one moment to the next. In other words, if one could sum it up, the commitment to being uncommitted. My life should be a constant scenario, frame after frame of escapism. I can go here, I can go there, I can do this, I can do that. Nothing's holding me back. That's a very appealing image that it seems to me permeates. It's a theme that runs through a lot of advertising. And again, the advertising doesn't have to be for a getaway holiday necessarily, but the getaway holiday will be used, that idea of escapism, of freedom, of total lack of commitment, of a kind of going with the flow, do what I want. That'll sell chocolate bars, it'll sell soap powder, it'll sell anything you want. So really, if you think about it, society pays lip service to what they would call the Judeo-Christian ethic of commitment, stability, fidelity. But if you look at, advertising, you'll see that's really not what people are really interested in at large, society at large. I'm not talking about individuals. Of course, individuals are totally individual, and every different person has. But it seems to me that what advertising represents something about the society itself, how society frames its values. And it seems to me that the common theme, as I've been trying to put across to you, is this idea of the common aspiration is to go with the flow. Take it easy, chill, hang out, freedom. But unfortunately, modern man finds his flow severely restricted. At every turn, he's encumbered by commitments. A house, a home, a spouse, children, a mortgage, a second spouse. All of these things tie a person down to what we would rather not face, which is called reality. But what a person would really want to do, and that's expressed in advertising, is he'd like to take off, travel the world with an unlimited credit card facility and to follow any or all of a myriad possibilities. In other words, the fact that in the modern secular world we tolerate responsibility doesn't mean that we've accepted that as a value system. Really, underneath it all, there's a desire to be somewhere else, anywhere else, everywhere else. Where does this ideology of irresponsibility come from? Where are its roots? Many years ago, I was in the States, and you'll probably be able to tell me where this is. There's the Warner Brothers store. I think it was somewhere in Manhattan. Warner Brothers store. I went in there. It was absolutely amazing. All my childhood memories coming back to life. They had original animation cells of The Lady and the Tramp. They had, I think, a mere $500 at the time, probably about 4 times the price by now. Original cells, like the animation cells, the picture itself, the celluloid. A Batmobile that looked so real that you could get a parking ticket for it. Bugs Bunny ashtrays, pajamas, cookie jars. I've never seen a store so full of things that I didn't need. I think it was probably 50 years ago now that Canadian sociologist Marshall McLuhan coined the phrase, "The medium is the message." The medium is the message. The medium is so to speak, the way things are transmitted, communicated. And the message clearly is the message. In other words, what he said was that basically in Western society, it's probably equally, if not more important, the way you say something, the way you put it across, the way you dress it up, is almost as important and maybe more important than actually what you're saying. I mean, it was amazing at the time when Ronald Reagan, who was basically I'm not judging Reagan as a politician or a president, but his pedigree, where he came from, he was a former B-movie actor. And the fact that a B-movie actor could become the most powerful man in the world why was that? Because he had as they say, he had the teeth and the hair. That's what they want in a newscaster. It's not the method, the presentation, the wrapping of the box becomes as important, and what becomes problematic ultimately is it becomes the box itself. It becomes the contents. We've talked about this in previous times, but man has this tremendous predilection to throw away the contents and rejoice around the wrapping. It's interesting, you see with kids often, you buy them a present, they get more involved with the wrapping than the actual toy you give them. could be that because there's more creativity that's available with the boxes, but also I think that there's a certain man has this unfortunate tendency to latch on to what we call in Hebrew the toffel, what's subsidiary, what's non-essential, and to ignore, discard, or overlook the essential. Let us go into this in a bit more detail, the idea of the medium and the message. The medium, we would say the material, the way things are framed and what they're actually saying. Let us go back and let's take our Chumashim right back to the very, very beginning of the Torah. Very first posuk in the Torah. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim va'as ha'aretz. In the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth, v'ha'aretz, and the land, ha'yisa so vo v'choshech al pnei sahom. And the land, the world, was sohu, vohu, two words which we'll talk about in a second, v'choshech al pnei sahom, and darkness upon the face of the deep. Now these two words, tohu and vo, are translated totally inadequately into English. The Art Scroll says this was astonishingly empty. The Ramban says actually these are two stages, distinct stages of creation. Tohu v'vo. Let me preface this by saying, as we started our discussion about the medium and the message, everything in the physical world is a marriage of form and matter. Of the message, which is, if you like, the form. The form of something describes what's its purpose. It's the message. And the matter, the chomer, is the way that purpose, that message expresses itself, or was allowed, it gives it the ability, the possibility of being expressed in concrete terms. In Hebrew, these are called chomer v'tzura, material and shape, the medium and the message. Matter is the raw material. Form molds that matter to give it a specific shape. The form, as we said, the shape of something is its spiritual component. It reveals its purpose. The purpose of something is always connected with its spiritual. Everything in this world has a spiritual component, even physical things. By spiritual, spiritual means that it has a purpose. It's there for a reason. It doesn't just exist. The world of the spirit deals with purpose. What's it all about? What am I doing here? So even something as, let's say, simple as a spoon is a marriage of these two things. There's the metal and there's the shape. The shape describes what it is that the metal has been shaped into this form for. It's to stir. It's to eat your cornflakes with. It's its purpose. It's its spiritual component. So even something as basic as a spoon, something very physical as a spoon, has basically a spiritual component to it. When Hashem first created the world, He created something called Tohu. Tohu, the Ramban says, is unformed, pure matter, pure chomer, without any kind of shape whatsoever. Pure physical matter from which, at this point, no purpose could be defined. No shape could be defined. Its spiritual dimension was not yet revealed. In other words, all chomer, all pure physical matter contains within it the myriad potential of everything that you might be able to form from it. Yes?
So you're saying the wrapping or the shape, whatever, describes the purpose and its spiritual component. So what does the chomer describe? Just how effective it's going to be in that purpose?
No, there has to be a marriage of the two. The chomer is the raw physical material which allows the spiritual, the purpose to be actualized in the world.
Right. And so,
Like a spoon, for example. A spoon is a perfect example. A spoon is basically metal.
right.
Metal is what? Metal is metal. Metal contains within it an infinite number of possibilities. But once it's made into a spoon, its spiritual, quote unquote, purpose is revealed. Purpose and spirituality, I'm saying, they're basically the same thing.
Okay, fine, yeah. But I'm saying, well, let's take, like, with the example of a spoon, it could get like confusing because you could have the same shape, a metal spoon and a wooden spoon,
True.
right, or a plastic spoon.
Right.
And they can have similar but different purposes.
Okay, but then the purposes would be slightly different one from the other. For example, you wouldn't...
Any significance in it?
Say again?
Not significant enough to...
I mean, I'm just using it as a mashal, as a parable to show how the marriage of matter and form, of choma and tsura, works out in the real world. That everything in the world really is, if you think about it, a marriage of these two things.
Right, but I'm saying, but well, okay, from one man to another, are you going to say that they have different shapes or the same shape?
Maybe we can leave this to one side and I'll come back to it.
Okay.
So, the Ramban says that, as we said, Hashem first of all brought into existence something called Tohu. Tohu means unformed, totally unformed matter, where nothing can be discerned in it. And the Ramban says that the ancient Greeks had a word for this, they called it chiuli, a Greek word. The Torah calls it tohu. And this was really the very first dot of creation, pure matter, ungarbed by form. Now it's interesting because the word tohu, Rashi says, is connected to the word for regret, or wonder, or to be amazed. Why? Because if you were trying to give this formless substance a name, you would immediately, so to speak, regret your decision, your definition, because you say, no, it's not really that. Well, maybe it's that. No, it's not really that. Excuse me. At this point of creation, it's impossible to distinguish anything to do with form. It just is this raw, totally raw material. And therefore you go on and on. The second name you'd also regret is insufficient to really describe what it is, and so another, and another, and another, because this elemental matter called Tohu could not be garbed with a name. As it had no form, its purpose was yet undefined, it could not have a name. Tohu excuse me, represents unactualized potential. Okay.
Did it have a spiritual component as well?
No, the spiritual component was as yet hidden. It hadn't yet emerged. Then the second step is vohu. Vohu is really when form starts to emerge. And if you think of it, the Ramban's vohu is bo-hu. Bo, in it, hu, there is. In it, there is. It's possible to start saying there is something here, to define a recognizable form. So, just to go over it again, everything in this world then we're saying is a combination of matter and form, of chomer v'tzura, and by definition, matter has no form. It has an infinite number of latent forms of different shapes. Matter ungarbed by form has unlimited potential uses. In a world which is all chomer, all matter, everything is possible. Nothing is fixed. You can go with the flow. Does this start to sound familiar? The epitome of matter ungarbed by form is water. Water always takes the form of the container it's in. By definition, water has no tsura. Water, so to speak, is the archetypical example of chomer bli tsura, matter without form. And for that reason, the Hebrew word for water is mayim, and mayim is a plural noun. Water can never be singular. Water is the essence of plurality. Many, 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 many possibilities. Now, if you remember something about, we'll get to Egypt, the Egyptians worshipped the Nile. The Nile, obviously, was water. What does this mean on a deeper level? What was the Egyptian, of course, on a simple level, they worshipped the Nile because the Nile gave them sustenance. It was only through the Nile that they were able to grow their crops. But on a deeper level, it represents plurality. It represents going with the flow. It represents unrestricted matter. The desire not to be pinned down. Freedom to do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can change whatever you want. You're not tied to anybody. And that's why Egypt, was an entire society dedicated to the pursuit of infinite variety. And of course, by definition, such a society is incapable of and scorns marital fidelity. Every Friday night we sing a song called Eshes Chayil. On a deeper level, Shlomo Melech was talking about the Eshes Chayil, the woman of valor. In a deeper sense, the role of the woman and the role of the man are very different. The role of the woman is the role of chomer. A woman is much more connected to the physical side of existence than a man. Life, in its most physical sense, comes from the body of a woman. A man is more connected to what we would call the tzura, the shape of things. The Yeshes Chayil is the representation of chomer that accepts willingly the tzura. The Eshes Chayil is the wife who understands that her job is to accept the tzura, which is given to her by her husband. That is the Eshes. That's the idea of Jewish marriage. The man in the family is responsible to create the tzura, and the woman is responsible to take that theoretical, sometimes ungrounded spirituality and to bring it down to earth. I think they talk in other cultures of the earth mother. That's a Jewish idea. The woman in the house concretizes, gives definite. Well, no, she is ma'afsheh. She gives the possibility for the shape to exist. Shape cannot exist by itself, as form by itself. It has nothing to hold on to. That is the idea of a Jewish marriage, the perfect synthesis of shape and material, form and matter. The Eshes Zenunim, the faithless wife, was Egypt. The faithless wife that is Egypt is basically, and this is the point I want to get to, is chomer, is matter, that perceives itself to be form. And by definition, therefore, it seeks infinite variety. Rather than the Eshes Chayil, who understands that she is the chomer that must be faithful to the tzura that's given by her husband, the Eshes Nunim, the whole culture of Egypt was about this relentless, insatiable desire to be, now this. That is the way things are supposed to be. That is chomer perceiving itself as form. It doesn't need form. Because that's what form is. Form is infinite variety, infinite infidelity. Another wife every day, to put it nicely. A new partner. Does this sound familiar to you? Does this sound rather similar to another society, which we're a little bit more familiar with? Inconstant as water, she wants to go with the flow. And as I said, maybe just give me a little, in diametrical opposition to this culture stands the Jewish home, and in Chazal refer to a wife as a bayit. The home is the wife. The Jewish home represents the unique, ultimate triumph of matter expressed in form. of matter expressed in form. The form has been faithful to represent, to take that, the other way around. The Chomer has been faithful to the form that has been given to it. The Eshes Chayil, the woman of valor, is able to concretize and limit this incessant potential and give it unchanging stability. Yes, I'll take your question.
Why is it that because Chomer perceives itself as having surah, that makes it want to go and pursue?
Because Chomer has infinite potential.
Okay.
If a society which understands that is the tzura, that's the way things are supposed to be.
Oh, the infinite potential itself.
Infinite potential is its tzura. It refuses to accept, to, so to speak, it's a travesty of the relationship between tzura and chomer, between form and matter. The ideal, the Eshes Chayil, represents the chomer actualizing, concretizing, and accepting that tzura of the husband. The infidelity, the Eshes Nunim, perceives herself to be that infinite potential that's there within Chomer. That's the way things are supposed to be.
So seeing themselves as having a surah, and what is that surah? Unlimited
Right,
potential.
right, exactly. The cornerstone of our belief, let's talk now a little bit about the mezuzah and how the mezuzah plugs into this. The cornerstone of our belief in God's constant involvement and guidance of this world is through the Exodus from Egypt. I think a while ago we learned the famous Ramban at the end of Parshas Boy, which I may do it next week if you want, or we'll see, I have to think about it, but it's certainly something that you should learn before the Seder night. It really tells you what the Seder night is all about. And basically the way that we relate to God's constant involvement in this world is through remembering the experience of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And one of the days we internalize that belief throughout the generations is by fixing a mezuzah to our doorpost. Now it's interesting, in the 2 paragraphs of the Torah that constitute the mezuzah, if you open it up, you will find there's not one word about the Exodus, which is counterintuitive.
Shema,
Doesn't say anything about the Exodus.
it says you brought us from Egypt.
Where?
In the Shema?
Where about? Show me, please. In the first paragraph,
Oh, it's only the first.
It's only the first 2 paragraphs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
If the job of the mezuzah is to implant in us a steadfast faith in the miracles of Egypt, shouldn't the Exodus be mentioned at least once? When Klal Yisrael were about to leave Egypt, the Jewish people were about to leave Egypt, God commanded them to place the blood of the Pesach offering on the doorposts and their lintels. Why the doorposts? Why the doorposts? He obviously knew which houses were Jewish and which were not. Remember, that was to allow, so to speak, that he would skip over. Pesach comes from the root to leap. Pesach, which means an opening, also as this comes from the same root in Hebrew as the word to skip, to leap, to jump. The Torah teaches that the God, so to speak, leapt over, passed over the entrances of the Jewish homes in Egypt. Now, what has to be understood here is that the exodus from Egypt was not merely a physical exodus. It was no less than a leap from one worldview to another. 2 totally distinct, totally irreconcilable views of the world. A leap from a world of the Eshes Zanunim, of unbridled matter, to a world of form, where matter accepts that form. And ironically and inevitably, if you think about it, this leap takes place when? While the Jewish people are immobilized in their homes. The Pasuk says, and you may not leave your house until morning. the place of that leap, the place that takes place where they're immobilized in the home. The mezuzah doesn't talk about Nitzias Mitzrayim because the mezuzah represents the rite of passage from one reality to another. The blood of the Korban Pesach that was daubed on those doorposts and the lintels, what's left of that blood is the mezuzah. The mezuzah represents the blood of the Korban Pesach. And that metamorphosis from a world of matter into form has to be in the place which is the essence of form, the abode of the Eshes Chayil, the Jewish home. The Pesach, the leap, that's what the Exodus was. The mezuzah does not speak about the Exodus, for it is the Exodus. That's what happened. A complete leap from one world to another. The mezuzah marks the border between the street and the home. The street says, go here, go there, do this. You can do that. Everything is possible. You can flow all over the world. That's the street. And our experience of the street, we know everything is possible. You can go anywhere in the street. You can end up anywhere if you keep flowing. Nothing is fixed. The mezuzah stands at the as a sentinel at the threshold to the Jewish home and states unequivocally there is no connection between the street and the home. These are two non-contiguous, irreconcilable entities. There's a fascinating halacha about the mezuzah. Now, you know on the outside of a mezuzah, there's what? One of Hashem's names, which is spelled Shin and Daled and Yud, which we pronounce as Shadkai. It's really Sha and then Dai, but we don't say it because it's the name of Hashem. It's one of Hashem's names. The Zohar HaKodesh says that the way the mezuzah has to be written is that on the exact same place, if you unroll the mezuzah and you flip it over, where it says Shadkai on the outside, on the inside it says V'hoya. V'hoya im Shema, I think it is. V'hoya. Now V'hoya is an interesting word. What can you tell me about that word?
Same letters and Yud Kei Vav Kei.
Yod Kei Vav Kei. Shadkai bachutz, Yud Kei Vav Kei bifnim. Shadkai is the name of limitation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and He created it in such a way that the world would have continued, existence would have continued expanding, more and more and more and more, until Hashem said, die. Misha Omer Olam die. He is the one, She said, who said to the Olam, die. Enough. Ad kan, here. It's the name of limitation. Yud Kei Vav Kei is the name of names which is without limitation. Meaning, if a person says die, enough, to the street, let's put one more halacha into this to make it more sense. In Hilchas Shabbos, there are things different called Reshuyot, domains. There's the Reshut Harabim, the public domain, and there's another Reshut, there are other Reshuyot, but we'll just deal with two of them, called the Reshut Hayachid, Reshus Hayachid. The Reshut Harabim only extends to about 3 feet off the ground. About 3 feet. Horizontally, it can spread out everywhere, but it's limited. It never rises above 3 feet. That is the Reshut HaRabim, that is Egypt, that's a world of constant possibility. The Reshut HaRabim theoretically could go all over the world. You could go everywhere, but it never ascends. The Reshus HaYachid, the private domain, goes ad hashamayim, goes to the heaven. The word shadkai, on the outside, if we protect our homes on the outside, we leave the street outside, that irresistible. So not irresistible. I forgot the word. That desire to just more to spread out, to flow. If we say die, that's our mezuzah that stands on the gatepost of our homes, which represents the jump from Mitzrayim and everything it represents to the Jewish home bifnim. If we say die to the street, which can never rise up, it can go everywhere, but it'll never rise. Inside, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei will ascend to the sky, to the extent that we make a limitation to the world, the street. Ad kan, to here and no farther. You do not pass my threshold. Then Yud Kei Vav Kei, the ineffable name which is without limitation, will ascend in the person's home, Ad Shemaim. There is no limit to the ascent. That's really basically what I wanted to put across to you tonight. Just maybe pull out the major points. The world we live in, I would like to suggest, is really none other than than Egypt today. We live in a world of infinite possibility. Not only possibility, but the philosophy of today's world is that why miss out on it? Why you need to experience everything. I mean, and if you don't, then in some way you're a little bit weird. I mean, from somebody of my generation now, what's going on out there, I'm not going to go into details, is what's considered to be normal now is Egypt. Infinite possibility. I mean, it's got to the point now where LGBDRSTU. It's so many letters now in order to.
You missed 5 letters.
What?
You missed 5 letters.
It's just, it gets long. Every minute there's another letter. It's going to be. Where does it stop? This is infinite variety. This is go with the flow.
You don't even need to leave your house anymore. It's like on the computer.
That's what I was trying to say. To the extent that a person makes a demarcation line and he says, I'm not letting the street into my home, then his connection, his spirituality, he makes his home, his Eshes Chayil is not just his wife, it's the atmosphere of his home. It's the Jewish home which is faithful to Yud Kei Vav Kei. How? Because I have a sentinel on my door. I have a soldier standing at my door saying, die to the street. This is it. Ad kan. That's it. Because otherwise we're faced and we see it. That's what it's all about. Infinite variety. Okay.